Welcome back to another tier list, everybody. It's time for the tier 10s. Once again, I'd like to just remind everybody that this is all opinion-based. This is not really taking an objectivity into the consideration. There will be some tanks, once again, like in my tier 8 premiums, that I don't really care about here or there. Then I might swing some objectivity into it. But for the most part, this is purely just if I like the tank or not and where I would put it. So let's go and rename all the tiers first of all. This is must grind. I say grind because you probably would have to grind them. You could free XP your way up, but then I wouldn't recommend that. But must grind. Highly recommend. Consider. We'll do highly consider again. Shortlist, probably avoid. And then we have the big fat poo. Every single one of these is going to be as if I was creating a new account and what ones I would, like how I would order them all. So for each tank, I'm going to be looking at them and then going, how much would I want to grind that vehicle if I was on a brand new account? That's the kind of consideration we're taking into this. And again, it's all in my opinion. You could have a different opinion. You are not wrong, just the same as I am not wrong for my opinion. Some people forget this somehow, but opinions are not facts. We're also going to be trying to do this a little bit faster because I was editing that video for the tier list, for the tier 8s, for 7 hours. It took 4 hours to record and then about 7 hours to go through and sort out. We're going to go through this a little bit faster. So, the WZ1321, what even is the name? Is it 1321? The WZ1321. No. I mean, I don't really see anybody who would put this in anything above this. I think that this is a pretty, like, controversial? Jesus, contradictious has got in my brain now. Non-controversial opinion of this vehicle. It's a bad tank. It doesn't perform well as a light tank. It's okay if you use it as a medium tank, but that's about it. It's a really bad light overall. The 121. I'd actually... you know what? The 121, it's a rare vehicle that you actually see it, but it's not awful. Yes, it has 340 heat, and it has 262 standard pen. The only problem with this vehicle is that it doesn't get gun depression. It goes at -5 degrees, which is really quite terrible. And you're probably going to struggle with it a lot. Yeah, I think that shortlist is fine. BZ75. Shortlist again. This tank isn't... It's not a good vehicle, but it's not a very bad vehicle. And I think that the rockets... The thing is, if you're just talking about for purely randoms, I think that it's shortlist kind of territory. Because you can have good games, you can have bad games. You know, it's got the funny rockets. You can get into position fast. And you can get into positions a lot faster than, say, other people of the same style of heavy tank. And the gun, yeah, the gun's pretty derpy sometimes, but overall, it's not a bad vehicle. I quite enjoy playing this, which is why it's not in, like, a void. So, yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, 3 big weak points on the roof really do let it down, which is why it's not any higher than this. But it's very flexible with the rockets, and also if you play Onslaught and stuff like that, it's actually quite a nice vehicle to have on certain maps. We're mainly going to be talking about random battles for this list. The 5A, highly consider. This is a nice tank. I don't think that it's as good as like a 277, and some people like to throw... you know, weigh pros and cons against 277. I don't think that it's as good as it, but I think that it's a good tank nonetheless. You have more gun depression, you have more DPM than the 277, but the armor is less forgiving and less reliable, especially the turret armor. But the gun is nicer on this vehicle than the 277. That being said, the 277 standard pen is much better. So... you know, I think that highly considered is absolutely fine. The WZ, it's so good. This is like the best tank. Not the best tank, actually. One of the best tank destroyers at tier 10, actually. The WZ111, whatever it is. What is the name? I hate the Chinese tech tree. It doesn't even say it on here. WZ113? Yeah, the WZ113GFT. That's the name of the tank. Yeah, I honestly think that this is amazing. And if I was going to grind any tank destroyer line, it would probably be this first. because it's actually quite nice overall. There's not really too many tanks that get in the way of you overall. I mean, if we go into like the tier 8 can be a little bit of an issue. But, I mean, you just slap people for 340 heat and then they just cry. So yeah, and the tier 9's insane as well. Yeah, I think that this is a must grind. It's one of the best tank destroyers at tier 10. It's a lovely tank. The Tessak, poo. I don't know why you'd grind this. I genuinely don't know why you'd grind this. It has nothing. The only thing, just like with the tier 8 tier list where we have the Squall, it has nothing other than the funny clip potential. It has no scoutability. It doesn't really have combat capacity against tanks that have any form of armor either. Yeah, this tank, if this was a medium tank, it would probably be a little bit higher up, maybe in like a Void, because it still wouldn't be great, I don't think, unless they made some serious buffs to it. As a light tank, it doesn't function as a light tank overall, so it belongs in poo. The TVP, I don't really know where to put the TVP. The thing is with the TVP, it's either in highly consider or shortlist. The problem that I have with the TVP is that it's very situational, and the gun can sometimes just do nothing. Like, it would just go wherever it wants to. No, right. It's going in shortlist. It's going in shortlist for a very, very good reason. The Batchat got buffed. The Batchat got buffed, and this thing is not as good as a Batchat now. This is not as good as a Batchat now. When the Batchat got buffed, this thing went down a little bit. Because this doesn't have really good pen. The Batchat does. This doesn't have the clip potential that the Batchat has. However, it has more DPM, so it's understandable. Actually, how much more DPM does the TVP have over the Batchat? I don't think it's that much now after the buff. Yeah, it's a fair amount over it still, actually. Yeah, so it still has more DPM. Okay. But it still doesn't make up for the fact that you have lackluster standard pen, and although you do have the very fast clip potential, you don't have that massive clip potential like the Bat has. And you're also then slower than the Bat as well. I don't know. I think that considering the armor layout, you don't really have armor, but you do sometimes have armor. I think that this goes in shortlist, and then that's kind of ruining the Batchat further on, but, you know, obviously it's going to be higher. But the TVP, I think, in shortlist, some players will really, really enjoy this tank, and then other players will find it a little bit lackluster regarding pen and the gun being quite derpy. So I think that shortlist is fine for this. The VZ55, man, right, this is going in shortlist. Even though that I don't like the tank that much, I only don't like the tank because I was trying to mark it. And it's still not marked, by the way. When this got nerfed, it became very, very, very annoying to play. However, you still have the potential of the clip. And that's what makes it out of, like, probably a Void. Because if this had just a single shot, I don't see any reason why you would play this tank. Like, if it didn't have the double shotgun. Like, I don't see why you'd do it. Because you don't have pen. You are just a worse 277 in nearly every single way if you don't play with a double shot. If you use the double shot, it's quite annoying because it's not as good as it used to be, but it's still got that fun factor about the tank of just smacking someone in, you know, for 1,000 and then running off. I think that shortlist is fine for this. If it didn't have the double shot, it would be going down here. But yeah, after the nerfs, I don't think that this is as... I don't really think that you should necessarily get this if you haven't already got a 277. The AMX 13105. This one's kind of nice. I think shortlist. I don't think we go in highly consider, purely for the fact that Batchat exists. Man, I don't know. The Batchat has just, you know, it's... I know it can't... It's a better scout than the Batchat, but it's not a better combat capacity than the Batchat. And I think that the medium tanks really do outperform light tanks a lot of the time. Even tier 10 ones, apart from a certain few. It has 3 shots in the clip, which is not awful, but still not great. And yes, you have a good scoutability. That's all nice. Again, it's not as good as a Batchat. And that's where it kind of gets into the situation of you can't really put it any higher than this. So, yeah, I think shortlist. Some people will really like this. But if you're a true light tank, I think that you'll like this probably more than the Batchat because you won't really use the gun as much. But yeah, shortlist this. EBR 105. Let's be honest. It's just a must grind. It's the best light tank in the game. There's no doubt about it. Everybody should grind this tank at some point. It might not be your first tank that you go and grind, but everybody should grind this at some point. It is absolutely game-breaking sometimes with what this thing can actually do. You have absolutely ridiculous camo rating. You have view range that isn't good, but you go at 95, so it doesn't matter. You can go all the way up. You keep all your camo rating. You know, you can have like 55% camo or something like that, and you bomb it down a bush line, and then that's it. You've spotted everybody. You then just retreat. It's kind of broken. I think that this is just a must grind, and I don't think many people would disagree with that. The bat chat. The bat chat's going to go in highly consider for one reason. I wouldn't want to grind this straight away. And also, because it's an autoloader, it can be a little bit annoying in certain situations. But that's only, like, this would be like the highest of high considers. And also, I don't really want to put it up here because then, you know, you could probably then move these ones up a little bit. But I don't think that I would want to grind this straight away, because I do think that there are nicer medium tanks to play than this. Speaking about the way that you get it as well, you have to grind out light tanks to go and get the bat chat, which makes it quite annoying as well. But this is not so much about the grind, this is just about how the tank performs. But even then, highly consider at the top there. 50B, shortlist. The thing is with the 50B, I like it, but it's not a tank that I would rush out to get. This is one of those, it's quite situational, similar to the TVP, and you can almost play like a medium tank because you are so fast. Fastest heavy tank in the game. But yeah, 50B is nice. It's not one of those ones that I would say I would rather grind over like a 5A. The M454, probably avoid. It's not as good as it used to be. It got nerfed pretty hard. It's not a poo vehicle, but when they did nerf it, they nerfed the top speed from what it used to be, and I think that's what really brought it down quite a lot. They could have probably kept the top speed at 40 and then just done whatever else they wanted to do to it, and then it would have been a little bit nicer to play. Yeah, I think the top speed kind of ruins this a little bit, because you're as slow as an S-Conk, and yes, you are kind of like an S-Conk, but less armoured. I think that you should probably avoid this tank. Foch B, shortlist. The Foch B, there's nothing really wrong about it. You go in, you do your clip, you hide, you reload, you go in, you do your clip, you hide and reload. You can ambush people. It's pretty good overall. The only thing that you need to watch out for is that you do have a long reload after you just finish your clip. And it can be quite expensive because the standard rounds are nowhere near as good as the premium rounds. And because it's an autoloader, you'll probably just want to spam full gold. Yeah, I think shortlist this. It's not going to be any higher than this. It kind of falls into the same category as like the 50B, where it's very situational with how you play it. And it's definitely not a one that I'd want to grind straight away. The RHM. See, the RHM's really nice because it's one of those vehicles that you can kind of go and do whatever you want. This is what the Tessac wants to be. Where do I put the RHM? I think it goes in shortlist. I think it's a bit too big. I think it's a bit too big to put it in highly consider. Because even though it does have scouting abilities, it's not like super high up. So this is more of a medium tank than a light tank. And so that's why it goes in shortlist. Especially if you compared this to, say, like the T100 LT, which basically just scouts better, has nearly the same kind of combat capacity, but not quite. But it's just such a better scout overall. The Leo 1 is going to be a must grind, let's be honest. It's going all the way at the front. This is like my favorite tank at tier 10. So yeah, this is... there's nothing getting changed about this. It's so good. I don't know. It has no armor, but that's the perk of the tank. You have an insane gun with no armor, which I just love. I love reliable guns, and it's amazing. Yeah, you're fast enough to get around to places. You're fast enough to flank if you need to. It's got good camo. It's got good DPM. It's got amazing accuracy. It's just a fantastic vehicle. The E50M, highly consider. Highly consider. I like this tank a lot. This is a nice, it just does everything as a complete package. It doesn't do anything super bad. And it's just a nice tank to play. Like you don't really have amazing DPM, but you make up for it with better than average armor. You have nice accuracy, really nice accuracy. You don't necessarily need stab. It's just a good tank overall. It just follows on from the E50 at tier 9, but just gives you more pen. and a little bit more armor, but not really that much. So yeah, highly consider the E50. It's a lovely tank. The Panzer 7, again, highly consider. Highly consider. This thing, when it got buffed, the gun is just, mwah! It's beautiful now. Genuinely beautiful now. Yes, you have weak spots. This is like the perfect balanced heavy tank, because you have weak spots, but if you learn how to hide them and stuff, you get away with stuff. Depending on who you meet, you can then just hide it. If you try to side scrape, there's always that weak spot below you. There's still the gun's weak spot that they can shoot, but your gun is just amazing in return. So yeah, bait the lower play. You then have 276 standard pen and 325 premium pen. It's amazing, man. Like this one is very high up. Like highly consider. I wouldn't go and grind it like first off, because I think there are better tanks than this, but it's a lovely vehicle. The mouse. It wouldn't be my first pick. It's going into shortlist because it definitely wouldn't be my first pick if I was grinding a brand new tank. It is one of the best super heavies, or probably the best super heavy in the game. I don't know whether or not you would class this as a super heavy like the Panzer 7. You probably would, maybe. But I think that if you're playing the super heavy role, the historical kind of role, whereas this can go kind of be going and just doing the normal heavies job as well, then this mouse plays better than the Panzer 7 in the true super heavy role of commanding everything that's going on around here. But the pen is so bad that I can't really put it up higher than the Panzer 7. You know, the pen difference with the Panzer 7, this thing is absolutely astronomical. Like you have 246 standard pen on the mouse versus 276. Yeah, it's like night and day, the difference. So yeah, shortlist, I'd be considering it, but not highly considering it. The E100, the same thing as the mouse. It has very bad standard pen. I don't think that it's as good as a Panzer 7, but it's a good tank nonetheless. Yeah, I can't really put it in the same category as a Panzer 7 because the Panzer 7 exists. And since the Panzer 7 buff, I just don't think that it's as good as the Panzer 7. The Griller. Oh, no. Listen, I have had many, many ups and downs with the Griller. I'm not going to put it in poo, okay? I'm not going to put it in poo, okay? I'm going to put it in probably avoid. The reason being is that sometimes it's amazing, but sometimes it's the most infuriating tank in existence. Like, you can be fully aimed and it just goes, no, I don't want to hit that. I like the floor. And then it just hits the floor for no reason. Even at like 50 meters away sometimes. And you could fully set it up as a sniper and it still does that. It's the most infuriating tank to play. And I think the reason why it's so infuriating is because you know how accurate it is, or it's supposed to be, and then it just does random stuff where it just misses. I think that's what makes me so angry towards the Griller, is that I know it should be accurate, but it just doesn't feel accurate. And that's mainly because of the bloom and stuff like that, where it just blooms out massively. It has absolutely tragic dispersion values for the gun. Soft stats dispersion values. I'm not talking about raw accuracy. And that's why I'll go and probably avoid. I'm going to leave it out of poo, purely because Ixin likes it, okay? We'll just leave it there. And he messaged me the last time that I said that it was poo. So I think we'll leave it out of poo. Okay, he can be happy now. Right, the Jagdpanzer E100. Highly consider. This thing is just lovely. It's so nice. You just smack people in the face for 1,000. The only reason why I wouldn't put it up higher is that it's very situational again. It wouldn't be a tank that I would want to go and grind straight away. I feel like this would be... I'm going to put it up higher than most tanks though, because I do really like this. The only problem is that it is big, fat, and slow. So in some maps, you just feel like you can't really do much. So I think that highly considered, but the gun makes up for it. The gun, like 420 heat, smacking someone in the face for 1,000 is just lovely. Okay, we're now moving on to the Italians. The Progetto 65, poo. Can we get it buffed? Like, seriously, I want this tank buffed. Because it used to be amazing. It used to be such a nice vehicle. And now it just has so much bloom on the gun. I just don't want to play it. It's not a useless vehicle. Like, none of these tanks are useless. You can have good games in all of these vehicles. But the Progetto really did just get nerfed into the ground. And then it got nerfed again afterwards. Like, it seems Wargaming just can't, like, stop nerfing this vehicle. And I really do want it buffed to a state that it's just usable. Just get rid of the bloom. Like, this is the issue that we have with the tank. You have 0.18 for moving, 0.18 for that, and then turret traverse of that. Make this like god tier gun handling, because it has nothing else, right? You have some bouncy armor now and again, but make this really nice gun handling, like really nice. And then we can talk about it, because everything else about the tank is just mediocre. There's no reason why you would play this tank over a different vehicle. There's no reason playing this tank over... what other medium tanks do we have in it? I'd rather play a TVP. I'd rather play a Batchat. Much rather play a Batchat. Much rather play a Leo 1. It's just not nice to play. So I think that you just need to buff the gun dispersion, the bloom dispersion, and then it'll probably be on shortlist or something like that. Because everything else is fine. It probably needs a little bit more DPM, let's be honest, but if it has an auto reloader, it's not too bad considering bad DPM. So the Rhino, again, the same thing. Man, listen, I'm sorry, Toddlets, but the Rhino's it's going in poo. It is a big poo-poo tank. I don't know why you play it. It has no armor. It has no DPM. The gun is somewhat accurate, fine. Like, look at the dispersion values. 0.3 for moving and tank traverse, and then 0.14 for turret traverse. Why? With such bad DPM. And again, I know, saying about DPM, at least make it over like 2k. Make it like 2.2k or something, like the Progetto has or something like that. Because every single time that you play the Rhino, by the way, you just get shot here. Like every time. And then if they use heat rounds, they then just go through this. Like look, you go to a live model. Wow, what a lovely heavy tank. Even if it's hold down, I'll just go and shoot this. I don't know. I don't know, man. It's just no. The Minotauro, shortlist. It's not up higher because it's a boring tank to play. Really boring tank to play. After the nerf, it became a lot nicer to play because at least then you weren't just completely impenetrable. But it's still a very boring tank to play. It's just one of those tanks where you peek up, you go hold down, everybody can't pen you unless they hit the cupola, and then you go back, reload, do the same thing. It's a very boring tank. I wouldn't say... you can't go and probably avoid because it's not as bad as other tanks. I would maybe consider it at some point, but it wouldn't be anywhere close to being the first one that I grind. Man, Wargaming really do just hate Italy, don't they? Like, can we start a movement of like buff Italian tanks? Like, all that we have right now is a Progetto 46. That's like the only... Maybe the Pantera as well. That's like the only decent tanks that we have, isn't it? Maybe the tier 9 heavy isn't too bad. STB-1. Highly consider. Highly consider. It's a good vehicle. The siege mode drives me mental. Like, apart from that, listen, if it didn't have siege mode, I'd probably grind it like straight away. But the siege mode makes me just... You know those like memes where you've got like steam coming out your ears? That's how I feel whenever I'm playing the STB. Like, whenever I'm on a ridgeline and I suddenly want to aim down a little bit and use the siege mode, it's just infuriating me. Infuriating. Would you say that Italian tanks make you Mad Max? Yes. The Type 71. Oh my god. Oh my god. This has the most useless gimmicky mode I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what's worse, whether it's the Rinoceronte or the Type 71. Because the Type 71 actually has armor. It has a cupola, but it has turret armor. It's nice turret armor. But everything else is useless. The hull armor is useless. It even like bows down and you can pen it in the hull if it even slightly presents the hull armor to you. The gun is good if you've waited for half a decade while it then loads. How long does it... Is it when you stand still or is it when you've just fired? Does it work the same as concentration or does it work where if you haven't fired in a while, you then get the buff? I haven't played it since it came out. It cools down and makes it more accurate. So, yeah, you just wait. I was going to say that it'll probably be a good candidate for concentration, but no. Yeah, this thing is just awful. Nobody should be grinding the Type 71. I don't know why they to be fair to you, I know why they didn't make it better, because they didn't want to release a busted tank, but they seriously need to look at buffing this tank a little bit, even if they just buff the hull armor, because the hull armor is truly tragic on this vehicle. The Type 5 shortlist. You know what? Those of you that... it goes the same for the mouse, by the way. The Type 5 and the mouse can actually trade blows with each other. Because the reason being, you might think that I'm mental for this, they both have so much hit points that it doesn't really matter. Like, within this list, I wouldn't say probably avoid, just because the mouse is in this category. I would put it below the mouse, but they're still in the same category. The reason being, they have so much hit points that you just trade with people. You go in, they shoot you for 300, 400, whatever. You then hit them back for 600, and you then win that trade. And you have so much more hit points than them. If you're fighting someone like a VZ55, you can easily go up to him, you shoot him twice, you do more damage, and you still have 2,000 hit points available to you. Like, it's crazy how much hit points you have. The only reason why it's not higher, which is the same thing for the mouse, it's quite slow. Your standard pen is actually okay. It's not good though. And your premium pen is actually pretty decent. You have, what do you have on the Type 5? Premium rounds, 290 AP, which is actually very, very good. 290 AP is much better than 300 APCR because it will normalize nicer. So even when you're fighting 279s, especially because you're taller than them, you're going straight through the 279 like it's nothing. Yeah, I think that you just need to learn how to trade your HP effectively with the Type 5, and then you'll like it more than you probably used to. But yeah, there's obviously better tanks than this. Like, I wouldn't say that I would rather grind a Type 5 than the M454. I'd rather genuinely play that, because I think the M454 is just, it doesn't have any armor at all, and it doesn't have the hit points to then back it up. Whereas with the Type 5, you don't have any armor realistically because everyone will just fire heat at you, but at least you have so much more hit points available to you. So I think that's fair. That's a fair place to put it. The Hori 3, highly consider. I don't like the Hori 3 that much, but I would still rather play it than most of the other tanks. I find the gun incredibly annoying at times, and I find the armor completely useless. And when I was playing the Hori 3, when I made a video on it, I think I said that I didn't like it that much, and I still don't like it that much. I think that this tank doesn't have any armor, unless you meet people that are lower tier. Now that I've played it a bit more, you just need to play it as if you don't have armor, and then you'll probably do a little bit better. Because if you assume that everything that's going towards you will just pen you, you then play in a certain way that will then benefit you. I think Hori 3, highly consider. The grind there is not great. It's not a great grind. It's okay. Once you get the Hori 3, it's a better tank, especially with the 360 AP. The 360 AP is just, it's so good. It's so good. But yeah, I think that to anybody that is playing the Hori 3 and you're confused why everybody's saying that it has armor, because some people really do say that this thing has armor. I don't think this has any armor at all, especially if you're in tier 10. If you're in tier 8, then yes, it has armor. But in tier 9 and tier 10, you should just assume that everything is going to pen you when you fight someone, because it really doesn't have the superstructure armor that a lot of people think it does. The CS63, it's going in highly consider. This is probably the best medium tank package overall, because of the fact that it's so fast. You then change mode and then you have the DPM still, but it's not in a must grind because the gun is just, I don't really know how to describe the gun. Whatever stats the gun has does not correlate to when you play the game. The CS gun does whatever the CS gun wants, and that is the only reason why it's not a must grind. If this had a gun that was reliable, it would be in a must grind. It would be such a nice vehicle. And I think that I'll probably put it around about here, like second to the Batchat, because it is a good tank. It's a really, really good tank. The gun lets it down massively sometimes. So for that reason, we're saying in highly consider, not in must grind. The 60 TP, that is going straight up there, along with the Leo. This thing, if I was creating a new account, this would be the first heavy tank that I grind. The first heavy tank that I grind will be the 60 TP. It's the best heavy. It's the best tech tree heavy at the moment. It's so good. Currently, this is the tank you go and get. It's an amazing tank. I've made videos on it, worth the grind videos on it as well. Have I done worth the grind on the... Wait, has a 60 TP had a worth the grind video? 60 TP worth the grind. No, it hasn't been top of the tree yet. But I've done a tank guide on it. And the tank guide done very well, actually. I think that the 60 TP is just a sensational tank. Once it does go on top of the tree, I'll do a full worth the grind video, because the line is actually quite good as well. It's a pretty nice grind. There's not really too much to worry about other than if you're grinding stock. But once you're fully upgraded and you go up the tech tree, it's lovely. It's a lovely tank. You could do the only thing that you need to worry about the 60 TP is that it gets ammo racked a lot. gets set on fire a lot. Ammo rack more than the fire, much more than the fire. So experimental hardening, tier 3, right-hand fill mod, you should be absolutely fine. Or you just forgo that, put an ammo rack directive on it, and then do normal hardening, vents. No, not vents. We don't do vents. Normal hardening, rammer, and stab. I think that you're good to go with that. It's a lovely vehicle. The Blitzkowitzer. You know what? This is the only one I'm going to let chat decide on. But you get to pick between two categories. Okay? It's either shortlist or probably avoid. Because I don't even want to grind this tank. Actually, it's going in probably avoid. For one reason. For one reason alone. You cannot play... It's not flexible. It's not flexible. You cannot go further back to assist your team. So if you're losing, you can't then retreat and then go and help people. You have to stay there and probably die, and then your team will then run back and then you die as well. So it makes it annoying. This thing is only super good. Actually, do you know what? I've just realized that I've put it in the same tier as the Gorilla. Shortlist. Right. It's not as bad as a Gorilla. It's definitely not as bad as a Gorilla. The thing is with this tank is that it will excel massively at being an assault tank destroyer, but nothing else. But it plays its role super, super well if you are up close and just right in front of someone and smacking them in the face for 800 alpha or whatever the alpha damage is. But as soon as you need to try and retreat and run away, it's over. Like your DPM goes all the way down. The only real problem with this tank is that you also don't have armor as good as, say, like a V4, where you could then go and like blast yourself in and just obliterate people and then retreat. If you're playing against tier 9s and tier 8s, then yes, you have very good armor, but against tier 10s, not so much, especially considering that it has different angles. Let me show you. When you're fighting one of these things, it has about 300 pen here, and then if you angle again, this then becomes easy to pen as well. This is a nothing zone. Don't worry about that. It's not a pennable spot. You obviously have a cupola, yes, but if people are going to be playing this tank and stuff, then you're just going to be yoink straight through there. And then if you play against something like what has heat rounds? E100, sure. Heat rounds, you just go, and you'll be slightly taller than it as well, or even if you're not, you just go straight through the side. So, and then as it angles as well, you see what I mean? It gets annoying. It gets annoying quite fast regarding that. So, and that's not an understatement either. If they're firing standard rounds, you're fine. If they're firing premium rounds, which a lot of people will at tier 10, you're going to have a very bad time. Shortlist, I think it deserves it there. Listen, avoid. I don't care. I always get flack for this. Always get flack for this. That you all love the UDES. I hate the gun so much. The rest of the tank is actually nice. And I'm not putting in the poo section this time, but the gun lets this thing down so much. And I would rather just play an STB1, like so far above the UDES. The armor is amazing until you meet heat rounds, and then it kind of falls apart a little bit. But the gun, you have no pen on the standard rounds. They're very slow shell velocity as well. Yes, you can scout with it at times, but I don't like the gun. And I think that if you have a really, really, really bad gun on a medium tank, it's much worse having a bad gun on a medium tank than a light tank. And yes, this can play the scouting role, yes, as I've said, but it's still a medium tank at the end of the day. And it just doesn't have the pen that you would want in a medium. I'm not going to put it in poo, because I think that it's better than... It's better than these, okay? It's better than these. It's definitely better than these. But I'm not... I despise the gun on this tank, and I hate the siege mode as well. I hate the STB siege mode, but at least the gun, although a bit derpy sometimes, it has that 330 heat. It has the better standard pen. You know, it's nice. I put it there, okay? I put it there. It's above the rest, but I'm not going any higher than that. Remember, this is my opinion on if I'm starting up a new account and what I would want to grind. And this would be so far down the list of which tanks I would like to grind. The Kran. The Kran's on shortlist. It's a good vehicle, but I don't really know how to describe it. It feels a bit like a slug. The gun's fine. It's not good, which is why it's not in highly considered. But the thing is with this tank, it doesn't have a lot of pen, but you can kind of forgive that because it has the autoloader and you'll be up close to another heavy tank. And you have a basically impenetrable turret as well. Yeah, I think that I definitely wouldn't want to grind the Cran early on. This would be a very last kind of ditch tank towards the back of the tanks that I'd want to grind. But overall, the Cran's nice. It just needs. I think it needs some agility buff, honestly, or not. I mean, when I played it last time, it wasn't awful. So you need to also remember that you got an impenetrable turret at the end of the day. So the STRV 103B. The only issue with the STRV is that it gets set on fire a lot. It's quite situational on some maps as well. It's obviously very situational depending on what caliber you're facing. A lot of people are saying shortlist. I agree with shortlist. I wouldn't put it as highly considered because I wouldn't want to grind it. I wouldn't want to grind it over a Hori 3. I'd probably put it high up because I'd probably put it quite high up because I do quite like it. Not so much to then, warrant over the WZ or the Hori 3 or even the Jagdpanzer. I'd rather play all of those than that. The Manticore. I'd highly consider it. The thing is, this is the best scouting tank. This is the best scouting tank of every single one. But I am not a light tank player. So I'd have an EBR. Like that would be like one of my tanks that I would want to grind on a brand new account. But I wouldn't want to just rush out and grind a Manticore. The line is also tragic. I think for that reason, it's in highly consider. It's a very, very good tank, but I wouldn't rush out to get it. Look, chat, look what's next. Where do you think I'm going to put the Concept 5? If you've watched my tier 8 video, you already know roughly where it's going to go. Probably a Void. There is one reason why it's not in poo, and that is because of the gun. The gun simply makes up that it is better than a Progetto 65. It doesn't have DPM, but everything else to do with the gun is absolutely insane. If this tank had DPM and a little bit more agility, it would probably be on like highly recommend. I wouldn't say get it now, but it'd be in like highly recommend if this had more agility and DPM, but it doesn't. So it's going in probably a Void. Centurion Action 10. Yoink! All the way up. Yeah. What a machine this is. This is probably the most complete package as a medium tank in the entire game. Even more so, I think, than the Centurion, than the CS63, because the gun actually works. The gun actually works on the Centurion over the CS63. The whole reason why it's worth more to me than a Batchat is because the Batchat has a clip. The Centurion doesn't. Don't have to worry about the clip. And it has armor. You need to put experimental hardening on and then put on the last field mod, which has your... Oh, is it the last one that has the module HP? No, it's the track HP, not the module one. The track HP one. And then you use experimental hardening, boost all of that up. You have good track health. You have your modules being saved as well. And then you have either turbo rammer or vents rammer or even rammer stab, whatever you want to do on it. It's amazing, this vehicle. I wouldn't rather get it than a Leo 1 because the Leo 1 is my baby and that can stay as like the number one tank that I would want to get. The Centurion Action 10 is an amazing vehicle. A truly amazing vehicle. The S-Conk. Shortlist. This has fallen so far down. I still like the tank, but I honestly would rather play a Panzer 7 than the S-Conk now. After the nerfs, the DPM, listen, it didn't kill the tank, but now it's closer to the Conqueror at tier 9 than it is to anything else, or what it used to be. So I feel like it's now no longer in a situation where it's very, very dominant, and it's more just in line with everybody else. Yeah, it's kind of sad that they knocked down like my favorite tank in the game, the heavy tank. But now the 60 TP is there. It's nowhere close to a 60 TP. The 60 TP just absolutely slaps the S-Conk, including overmatching its roof, which is funny. Very funny, because it shouldn't do that, but it does. The FV, man. The thing is, for me personally, I don't want to play them. There'll be some people that think, yes, so good, or up here, or maybe in the middle. It's funny when you hit someone for 1,750 or greater, but that's about it. It's big, it's quite slow, very slow in reverse, and it has no armor. Not to mention that the gun is insanely derpy. I hate this style of tank. I hate tanks that have really derpy guns and then nothing else that it has. The KV-2 is funny at tier 6 because it has some form of armor sometimes, and you're a heavy tank, it's a little bit more funny in that regard. But the FV just doesn't have anything else going for it other than the funny gun. And I think that this is incredibly toxic, and it should genuinely be changed to having a gun similar to like the Jagdpanzer 100. I think that would balance out the game a lot more, because it's not fun for the other person where they get hit for 2,000 in their Leo 1 or something like that. And it breaks the balance completely in that respect. I don't care if it's derpy or if it's funny for the one person, but you're then ruining the other person. So I don't know. I don't like these guns at all. I don't agree with them at all. The Badger. See, the Badger's really quite nice. The Badger is very, very nice. Yeah, I'd highly consider it. Yeah, if I was making a new account, I'd really consider grinding the Badger to the point where I'd probably want to grind the Badger over Jagdpanzer 100 just because it's more flexible. You have the Tortoise at tier 9, so even if I don't want the Badger, I could just stay at the Tortoise at tier 9, which is probably the best tier 9 tank destroyer in the game, at least for an assault tank destroyer. Yeah, the Badger improves on from the Tortoise slightly. You have a lot more armor than the Tortoise, but you miss out massively on the gun arc. And so it's a bit of a toss-up. Some people prefer the Tortoise over the Badger. I don't actually mind either of them, to be honest. The lower tiers are awful for grinding it. Badger is still very, very good, so highly consider. The Sheridan. It's not as bad as the WZ or the Tessac, but it's probably a void. It's not that great. The thing is, where's the RHM? The RHM's in shortlist. This definitely belongs in here. It's just a bit worse. It's a worse RHM, let's be honest. It's got good view range, obviously, but M48, highly consider. Another tank that got buffed recently, and now it's in a stage where I really do quite like it. It's more in line with the Centurion Action 10, but the Centurion's still better. It's very, very nice now after the buffs. Like the buffs that it got made it so that it's so close there that you could actually pick either. And it's kind of just down to personal preference which one you prefer now. So yeah, definitely highly consider M48. It's really nice after the buff. The M5Y. It's not as bad as a Type 71, but it's still an awful vehicle. It has a good turret, but you want to know the biggest problem with this vehicle? You know the pillars down either side? You know, these things? Yeah, you can pen them. I guarantee you, if you went and just shot randomly around here, you probably end up penning it. Obviously, you have the cupola that you can pen, although it's very, very rare that you actually hit that. Especially if it's using all its gun depression and whatnot, you know, it can become very annoying. And then these become a lot thicker. Everything else is kind of meh about the tank. It's not absolutely awful, but it's not good either. So you have the choice of two guns. You should definitely probably pick the 360 one, because it's just a bit nicer. You get more DPM, and you also get more penetration. That's the M5Y. Yeah, I don't know. Over everything else in this tier, I'd rather play it than an M5Y, but I wouldn't rather play it over this. And I'd probably put it I'd actually probably put it around about here for what I would want to play in the probably avoid section, because I would probably play an M454 over this tank as well. Overall, the M5Y is not a great tank. The T57 Heavy. Whew, highly consider again. Like this is a monster of a vehicle. Absolute monster of a vehicle. I wouldn't put it in the must grind purely for the fact that I wouldn't want to grind it early. I'd rather grind a 60 DP or any of the other ones, and especially considering I'm putting the Panzer 7 in here, I probably want to grind it as much as a Panzer 7. The T57 Heavy, this is an insane vehicle. It's a very expensive vehicle because you need to spam a lot of heat because you don't get a lot of ammo. So you need to actually take a considerable amount of heat so that you have that in reserve ready. But it's a lovely vehicle. You have the highest DPM of any autoloader in the game. Like 3,000 DPM, like base on an autoloader is insane. So yeah, this is really, really nice. E5, again, this is highly consider. It's above the S-Conch. It's a much nicer tank than the S-Conch now after the S-Conch got nerfed. Even though it has a cupola, you have more DPM than the S-Conch. You have 340 heat, good standard rounds, good armor overall. You've always been a better brawling tank than the S-Conch regarding hull armor, and now that the S-Conch got nerfed with DPM, this is a lovely tank. These two are, I'd go like this, like something like this in the order of grinding things. I really like the E5 now. It's really I say now because everything else has kind of been moved down. But the E5's always been nice, and now after the S-Conch got nerfed, it then kind of rose up a little bit. Definitely not as good as a 60 TP, but a good tank nonetheless. The E4, probably avoid. It's not an awful vehicle because its penetration and gun can just slap people, but it doesn't really have anything else. And unlike the FV, which again has penetration, can slap people, it at least has some form of armor against lower tier tanks. Whereas with the FV, you just have nothing other than the gun. Yeah, the E4, I think, belongs in probably a void. It's not one of those tanks that I'd want to grind. It doesn't have any armor in tier 10, but the gun is at least good enough, although it is quite derpy as well. The E3 goes in shortlist. See, I really like the E3, but I wouldn't want to grind it straight away. I wouldn't want to grind it more than like a... would I want to grind it more than Jagdpanzer? I can't put it in the same tier as the Blitzkrieg, no. Okay, right, highly consider for E3, actually. Highly consider. This thing is crazy. Yeah, I can't leave it in the Blitzkrieg one. This tank, you just don't have any weak spots, really, if you're hull down. Your cupola isn't a weak spot. Your lower plate is riddled with non-weak spots, which is very weird to say. Like, you have so many angles where your lower plate just becomes completely red at random points that you need to fire full gold at the lower plate, which is crazy. And then the cupola, even if you fire full gold, doesn't pen. You need like 340, 350 heat rounds to go straight through the cupola. Probably even more than that for heat rounds, to be fair. But the E3 is very good. Yeah, I put it in the same category as the Jagdpanzer 100. It's slow, but it even has like some form of DPM, which is the crazy thing. Like, you have 2,600 DPM. If you then put rammer on it, like 3,100 for an E3. Like, that's pretty mental. And then considering you have 375 APCR rounds as well, which only lose 10 pen at 500 meters, by the way, because tank destroyers usually only lose minimal amounts with their premium rounds at longer distances. Usually. There are some exclusions, like the GSAW 1008, but most of the time they don't have the pen drop off of other vehicles. Yeah, you still have 365 pen at 500 meters away with this tank. The exact same reason why the E4 is not in poo, because the gun is very good. But the E3 has so much more armor. Even though it doesn't have a turret, it's still so much better over the E4 or even the Blitzkrieg. Like, it's so much more flexible in randoms than those two tanks. So for that reason, it's in highly consider. The T100, this one, I'd put it above this. I'd probably highly consider it. The tank line isn't bad. I'd put it above the 13105 and the RHM purely for the fact that it can scout better. It can scout better than all of those tanks. I mean, maybe not the 3105, but the 3105 kind of doesn't have the combat capacity as such in comparison to the T100. So just because it has the autoloader. But yeah, the T100 LT is probably the best tracked wheeled light tank other than the Manticore if you want pure spotting, I think. Or at least I feel like overall as a package. Actually, not for pure scouting. This is probably better for pure scouting. But yeah, as a package, this tank is beautiful. This is I'd rather play it than the Manticore, or rather grind it than the Manticore. The K91. I don't like the K91. I find the gun infuriating on the K91. It's definitely not poo. I'm just deciding whether I want to put it in shortlist or whether I'd want to put it in and avoid. It's probably shortlist though. What's the other one? I'd rather play it than you does. Okay, yeah. Put it in shortlist. The thing is, it doesn't. This tank, I think, shows you that DPM isn't everything in the game, because you have the most busted DPM in existence, but it really doesn't mean anything when someone has DPM mixed with alpha damage and you fire out their reload time. Like, it's nice, but the gun is also very derpy sometimes. It definitely wouldn't be one of those tanks that I'd want to go and get early on. The 140. The 140 is in the same boat as the K91. I think the 320 alpha damage guns nowadays are not that nice. They're really not that nice. And they definitely can't be put further up because the STB1 exists there. So yeah, 320 alpha just is a bit of a letdown for nowadays World of Tanks when everybody else has more alpha than you. Yeah, shortlist for the 140 as well. The 430U, it's honestly not a bad vehicle, but I don't know if I would want to get it over like some other tanks. I'd probably put it in highly consider. Same as like the E50M, but the E50M is nicer. It's not a must get, but I'd rather play this over a 140. And I'd rather play the 430 over the 121 as well, which is important to note. So yeah, 340 heat, okay standard pen. It's not good standard pen, but you play this tank more like a heavy tank, and you can side scrape. You have a very good turret, good hull armor. You have a very nice package overall. It's just the gun can be very, very derpy, so you need to watch out for that. And you get set on fire quite a bit. Just like the 140, you get set on fire a lot. It's annoying, but overall this is fine. I think that, yeah, highly consider for the 430. The 277. Well, we put the 5A in highly consider, and I was already saying that I'd rather play the 277 than the 5A. To be honest with you, yeah, this would be one of the tanks that I'd want to grind, because it's a nice, reliable heavy tank. It doesn't have gun depression, which is the only real massive negative of it. Above the E5, probably, yeah, overall. Just purely for the fact that it's so fast. It's so fast, you can just get into position so much. Like, on El Halou, for example, I can go to A1 in my 277, and they're still trying to get into position. And then I have 340 heat to greet them. It's just a nicer tank overall for nowadays randoms than the E5, in my opinion. But I think that I'd want to grind the 277 over the E5. I think that it's more useful onslaught as well, to a certain degree. Yeah, I think that the 277 is one of the tanks that I'd want to grind straight up. The grind also to get there is really nice as well. The ST2 can go in the short list. This is like a perfect balance of a heavy tank. It has nothing exceptional, apart from maybe the double barrel, which is very funny, but it does nothing wrong either. It's just a balanced tank. You have weak spots, but you also have very, very good armor. I think overall, shortlist it. I might grind it at some point, but it wouldn't be one of the first ones that I want to grind. The IS-7, highly consider. The reason why the IS-7 is higher than the 277 is the penetration and the speed. I am not a person that will drop the rammer on tanks, and I am not a person that will go for full speed builds. But even if you played the IS-7 with turbo rammer stab or HP rammer stab or whatever it might be, it's still more than fast enough to get into position. But the penetration lets it down for me. Then if you're comparing the 277 to the i7, I'd rather play a 277. Now, that's not saying that you should do that as well, but you could say that the i7 is better than the 277. That's fine. You know, I think that it's a trade up between the two, because the i7 definitely has the better armor overall. But 303 premium pen with 250 standard pen is not nice, especially when you come up against mouse, you get type 5 and stuff like that. It's very awkward to play. I'd rather play a 277 than that. 705. This is again in the same kind of boat as the ST2, where I like the tank, but I don't think that it's an exceptional vehicle. And I definitely wouldn't take it over the Panzer 7. The Panzer 7 is a nice tank, a nicer tank overall than the 705A. So yeah, again in shortlist for 705. The IS-4. Where do we put the IS-4? Because this is the most like well-armed tank out of the entire Soviet tech tree. Even more so than the i7. Like, players will do better in an IS-4 than an i7 on average. I don't know what I would want to grind it in. Would I rather grind or get this tank or an IS-7? I'm putting it up here. I'm putting it here in highly consider, because you have the only thing that this tank is lacking is ammo count. I'd rather play it than most of the other heavies in here. Yeah, actually all of the heavies in here. I'd rather play an IS-4. I think that's fair enough. Decent enough standard pen, around 250, like I think 258. Yep, 258 standard pen. You have that 440 alpha as well. Gun is horrible with dispersion values, but that's what it is for a Soviet tier 10 heavy. Yeah, you have that 340 heat though, which is really, really nice. And idiot-proof armor for the most part. So yeah, highly considered for the IS-4. The 268 I would avoid. I wouldn't want to grind this tank. The gun is amazing, but the platform it's on is not good. So for that reason, it's going on probably avoid. I don't see many people rating this high, because yeah, it just doesn't really have much going for it other than the gun. It actually has very good DPM, but that's about it. Like, there's not a lot going for it. And then the V4. The V4 will be on shortlist. I wouldn't highly consider it, because I think that this tank is not as good as an E3, even though it is faster. It's one of those tanks that it can get in trouble very easily now after the nerfs. It's not as fast as it used to be. It's still a very good tank, but I wouldn't want to play this tank over an E3 or a Jagdpanzer, or the Hori 3 for that matter. I think that's fair enough. Let's do a little bit of rejiggling with the list to get like the first few tanks how I would want them. I don't think there's too many ultra controversial picks other than the UDES as usual. But and maybe the Gorilla, because people love the Gorilla. Right, so the must-haves, I think that's actually pretty good order that I would get them in. The Batchat will be first, then the Badger, T-57. I'd probably rather get a Panzer 7 than them. That's fair enough. I absolutely adore the Jagdpanzer, but it would be one of the last ones that I grind. Like, I absolutely adore the Jagdpanzer, but I wouldn't want to be grinding it. The light tanks are actually going to be the very last ones, just purely because I don't like light tanks. The 5A. Ooh, where do we put the 5A? 5A will probably be down the bottom somewhere. I don't know whether or not I'd rather play it than this. I probably, yeah, I think that's pretty good how I do that. Yeah, so we have the Batcher at 100% is like nearly in must grind for me. Then the CS, then the Badger, Panzer 7, T57 Heavy, E5, Patton, E50, SDB, Hoey 3. Okay, I like that list. Yep, that's all good. And then for this one, the Visa 55 will be one of the last ones I ever grind. I don't like it that much at all after the nerfs to it. The Mouse would be one of the last ones that I grind purely because of the fact that I'd have to go through the Maltian, which makes me incredibly sad. E100 would be up there though. 121 would be further down. Move the light tanks down as well, just because they're light tanks. Man, chat, don't you agree that grinding light tanks is horrible though? Like when you don't have the field mods. Like when you can't have two equipment choices, grinding light tanks is abysmal. It could be a very, very good light tank as well, but the fact that you don't have two equipment loadouts is horrible. They should just make light tanks have two equipment loadouts by default. Because some of the maps you just don't want to scout. And then again, you have like, you go into a game and you have like 4 light tanks per team. And you think, oh, right, well, I'm not scouting, but I have only the scouting build. So I'd rather do the 50B than that. The Foch can go back down there. Kran I wouldn't want to grind very often. K91 I wouldn't want to... K91 I wouldn't really grind at all. The same for the 140. Where's that? So I can go back down there. SD2 grind is not too bad. The 705A, again, is one of those tanks that I would like to grind. V4 is not too bad. You get to play a 263. That's nice. I want to move the mouse up. Okay, I'm moving the mouse up higher than a Type 5. And we're going to move that there. That. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. It's not. It doesn't really matter too much on the order, but wow. Yeah, the avoid list is I don't know where I'd want to put them. I don't know. The Sheridan will be last, then probably that, then like that. Oh, like that? Yeah. No. Yeah, like that. That's where I put it. And then the poo. There's no rhyme or reason. I'm not grinding these tanks. If I got a brand new account, there is no organization here for how I would want to grind these tanks because I wouldn't grind them. If I was created a brand new account, I would not grind any of these tanks. I wouldn't even consider it. So yeah, there we go. That's all the tier 10 tank destroyers. All the tier 10 tech tree tanks. I can't wait for all the comments telling me that I'm wrong about certain tanks, but there you go.